lovely people. Welcome back to another Writing Tip Tuesday. I'm Sammi, and I'm a writer who likes to help other writers become better writers. So this week I want to talk to you about something that I truly believe makes you a better writer, because any kind of faults or places that you're lacking have a way to develop from this particular method, and that is learning from other writing formats. So there are so many different kinds of writing. There are so many different kinds of storytelling. There's so many different formats of storytelling that any kind of writing for them can teach you something from somewhere else. And I'm speaking on this firsthand because I got a writing certificate in college that I was able to spread out and see multiple different facets of writing and how they could impact me rather than focusing in on one specific thing. And a lot of what I'm saying in this video is stuff that I have learned firsthand that has helped me grow as a writer, and I'm hoping it'll help you grow as a writer as well. There are infinite different kinds of writing. There's genre fiction,
there's literary fiction, there's nonfiction, there's memoirs, there's informational nonfiction, there's screenwriting, there's playwriting, there's poetry, there's prose, there's musicals, there's essays, there's letters, there's journal entries.
There's so many different ways that you can write words on a page and have meaning come across. There's so many different techniques for it. Everything that you write has the potential to teach you something about writing. And practice will literally always make progress when it comes to any format of writing. Let's talk about the different strengths you can improve upon or develop by using different formats of storytelling. So I'm going to start with the ones that I am least confident in and then move into the ones that I am more confident in based on personal interest. So we're going to start with nonfiction. Writing nonfiction gives you the opportunity to develop your skills in research and informational storytelling. If you're writing an informational nonfiction piece, whether that is an essay, an informative article, or something along those lines, calling it nonfiction, unless it is a personal experience, is definitely going to require some kind of research. And developing that skill for research can also reflect into fiction writing when you are developing characters who have interests that are different from yours. Writing nonfiction can also help boost confidence, which can help combat imposter syndrome, which is something that a lot of us have to deal with, where we feel like, but we don't deserve to be called a writer. We don't deserve to be complimented. We aren't doing what everybody else is doing. That kind of like feeling of not being what other people perceive you as. Nonfiction takes a lot of effort and knowledge and talent to write, and to write engagingly. So practicing with nonfiction, writing things that are true and helpful, are beneficial for feeling more like your words are making a difference. Building that confidence in your fiction writing or in more nonfiction writing, building that confidence is going to help you in pretty much any facet. If you are writing a personal nonfiction or a memoir, sometimes that can help with processing emotions and feeling the completeness of an experience and getting closure from a situation that has caused you either strife or emotional growth in some shape or form. Giving your feelings and your experiences a platform like a memoir or a personal nonfiction essay or something along those lines helps to legitimize your feelings and help you feel more like you are a person whose feelings matter, and that can help you in the long run with developing your characters' emotions and how they feel about certain things by being able to process your own and how those emotions make you feel. So into another format of writing that I am not super confident in, poetry. I have never really been a fan of poetry, but I had taken one class that did not list poetry as a section of the coursework or course material. So I took it because everything else sounded interesting, and I was genuinely upset when the poetry section came around. I had to go in for office hours several times, but I did learn something from it. And that is poetry, while a lot of it does not make sense to me, helps you develop your word choice and diction and figure out what word is going to do the best job for what you're trying to say, which can really help in edits, because a lot of times what we do is we just write and we write and we write and we write and we get the story out. And then when we're going through, we're like, wow, I almost only ever said as a dialogue tag. There's a conversation that's just he said, she said, he said, she said, he said, she said, he said, she said. I should probably figure that out. And poetry can help you with those like, I'm saying this word too often, what else can I do here? What will have a stronger impact on this feeling that I'm trying to express using this word? And giving you that word choice from poetry can really grow your writing in that way. Poetry is also typically a pretty compact format. There are some that are longer flowing, like prose poems and books that are just like one long poem, but typically they are very, very concise, and the format is getting your meaning out in a small, condensed space, which can help if you have long-winded descriptions that mess with the pacing of your story, or if you have an issue trying to get the dialogue to not feel so expositional. Getting the ability to write more concisely and be able to deliver your meaning in a concise, clear way that still fits into the description style, the character's voice for dialogue, or other such requirements is really helpful. Poetry also gives you the opportunity to play with double entendre and the meaning behind the words that you're using, which is not a super common thing to use in regular prose writing. But given the experience of using double entendres, not necessarily like dirty joke double entendres, but just like this word has multiple meanings depending on how you read it and what emotional background you have. That can give you the ability to put more depth into dialogue. You could have the prime minister of the church of your world talking to everybody and trying to condemn a rebellion of some sort, and he says something that has multiple meanings depending on what experience you have, where like the rich people who are regarded highly by the church hear it as like a really positive thing, and the people who are poor and aren't highly regarded by the church hear it as like, you guys are scum and you don't deserve to live. And that creates a different kind of conflict because of that double entendre. And that can create some really unique conflicts because it is entirely dependent on the reading of that word's meaning, and playing with double entendres in poetry can give you enough experience with that to use it confidently in narrative storytelling. You can also play with punctuation, which is not something that is commonly thought about. But when I read Reading Like a Writer by Francine Prose, there's a whole section on punctuation and phrasing and like when to use a semicolon, when to use long sentences, when to use short sentences. And it's not something that we see super often in modern texts, whereas in the classical text that she's analyzing, they had more room to explore those punctuation things that were going on that we don't necessarily explore as often because of the mental limits that we have placed on modern writing, modern fiction, modern grammatical requirements. So poetry gives you a chance to explore what the difference would be if you used a comma here, or a em dash, or a semicolon instead of a period, or no punctuation. It gives you the room to try out things that not necessarily everyone would be cool with in regular storytelling writing. And a lot of poetry relies heavily on symbolism, and I would just like to point out that I am not well versed in poetry. So if this is something that's just the poetry that I have read, I'm sorry, but it's still something that we could learn from writing poetry, so I still want to put it in here. Because of poetry's small format and the way that meaning needs to come across, symbolism can be a really helpful tool in getting your meaning across, in creating metaphors and developing that meaning through your poem. If you don't have much experience with symbolism, that may be a benefit of writing poetry, because it can give you the opportunity to play around with it in a confined, safe space. Your characters aren't going to lose any meaning or anything because of trying this out, and that will give you the opportunity to see if symbolism is something that you want to work into your stories. Are the curtains blue because they are depicting sadness, or are they blue because I like the color blue? It's a great playground for those like experimental things, because there aren't many, known to me at least, rules to poetry. So now we're getting into the ones that I am a lot more confident in. So I'm going to talk to you about screenwriting, which is what I thought I wanted to go to college for. Screenwriting is really great if you have any trouble about depicting scenes. And that means like if you have any trouble designing what the world looks like around you, it's really great for learning how to do that and learning how to do it concisely and knowing what is the important thing in this, because you're telling the camera what to look at. And in a way, when you're writing your depictions of the world, you're telling your reader what to look at the same way you're telling the camera what to show the viewers. If you have any trouble figuring out what the important part of your scene is in writing your descriptions, screenwriting is really, really great for that, because they have requirements and structures and formats and all of this stuff that goes on that makes it really important that you know what you're saying is important because of what purpose it'll serve in the future. And that helps greatly, especially if you have a hard time knowing what to say is important in the scene, or have a hard time condensing what to say in a scene, or you don't know what do my readers need to know about the place. Like, we're in a forest. What do I need to tell them aside from that? Which was a problem that I had for a while before I was developing my screenwriting skills. Screenwriting is also a great place to practice your pacing and timing, because everything you do in a screenplay, everything you write in a screenplay, you can equate to time. And that is the beauty of the format that is required for screenwriting, is that 1 page of properly screenwritten format text is 1 minute of filming. So knowing what you are dedicating your time to, if describing the forest is super important, you can dedicate a whole page. That's 1 minute of just looking at the forest around you. If looking at the forest is just like, oh shoot, we're in the forest, that should be 1 line. The rest of that page, the rest of that 1 full minute of screen time should be other things that you should dedicate your time to. And I do strongly recommend Screenplay by Sid Field if you are interested in learning about screenwriting format. There is also several free screenwriting format. The one that I used during college was called Celtex, and I have no problems with it, except that there's the script was made with Celtex. But if you're not selling your script, it's really not a big deal. Celtex and Screenplay by Sid Field, super helpful for figuring out that structure. And on the same page, structure. There is an expected structure, an arc, a storyline type of thing that screenplays are expected to follow. That can either be really, really great for you as a writer or really, really limiting for you as a writer. I think that even if it is something that you really love, you love the structure, you love being guided, you like knowing what kind of shape your story will take just from knowing what format it's going to be in, versus if you hate it so much, I think it's a really great exercise to work with, to follow that structure, to see what parts of the structure you can break and mold and make your own and still fit into those parameters. Of course, it's more important if you're planning to sell your script that you follow the certain things that are expected of screenwriters, of movie scripts, and play with them appropriately. But if you're just learning and you're just trying to develop your skills in the other places that I've set, the structure may be a fun thing to work around. Maybe a fun challenge for you if you are not usually somebody who works with an outline or a story structure guide. But I think that the 3-act structure that is well defined in Sid Field's book is super helpful, and it can be used outside of screenwriting, and there's no reason why it shouldn't be. Screenplays also can show you the value of your characters, especially if you're using a screenwriting software, because most of those, when you are typing a character name before the dialogue in your formatting, it'll give you the option to automatically type characters' names based on their first letter. And I have learned that a lot of characters that I just sort of want to be in the story end up getting lost or don't really matter later on or don't impact the story in a beneficial way. And I end up removing them from that script because they are just clogging up my character name file. It really helps you understand the value that your characters are bringing to the story and make sure that you are putting in the correct amount of value for those characters. Now let's talk about playwriting and musicals. They are amazing for developing your dialogue because 90% of a play is just dialogue. It's just characters talking to each other. Maybe a couple stage directions here and there, but it is just dialogue. You are relying on actors to be able to tell the story and give your characters life and history and feelings and emotions and read into that. So your dialogue is incredibly important for a play script. And I used to be terrible at writing dialogue. I took 2 playwriting courses and got significantly better in every aspect of where I was writing dialogue. All of them were just getting way better because I had to be able to differentiate the characters. I had to be able to just skim the page and read and know who was speaking. If I had just letters instead of their names, I had to know who was who, what their meanings were, all of that kind of stuff. And playwriting is absolutely amazing for that because there's nothing to guard you from it. There's nothing to protect you from not knowing who is speaking or why they are speaking or anything along those lines. So given that, your dialogue's quality will grow immensely if you write one 10-minute play, read it through like a week after you write it, and then edit it and see what the difference is from that first draft to your final draft. See how different your characters sound. See how their meaning comes across clearer because you only have your dialogue to give them that meaning. And it's really a great exercise and it's an amazing way to learn. It's an amazing way to find out that you were really bad at writing dialogue because if you write a play and you can't keep track of your own characters, ouch. And I'm speaking on first-hand experience. Playwriting is also a really great place for a lot of exploration. There aren't very many rules for what makes a play in comparison to screenwriting. There are so many rules and structures and formatting requirements and all of that. There aren't that really for plays. You can format your play however you want. You can use whatever font you want. You can set your stage directions in a different way. You can write with character names above the line of dialogue or next to the line of dialogue. There aren't any rules for formatting. There aren't any rules for how the story should flow. There aren't really any rules for anything. And I think one of the best ways to learn about how to write a play is just to read a lot of plays. And reading a play is a very different experience than watching a play. You don't have the ability to accrue meaning from the actors who are portraying it. Understanding who the characters are and what they're doing and why they're doing it from just what is written on the page will teach you so much about writing your own plays. It's also a great tool for learning how to tell a story with very few tools or resources. You don't have a page of world building that's just, hey, here's how the world works, here's where we're at. You don't have that. So you have to somehow build that into natural dialogue so that your audience understands where they are, what's going on, why is it happening, why are we acting like this. You don't have all of that space to give the information. You have to be able to put any kind of information about your world into the world through dialogue, through something that the actors can show, through something that can be seen on stage and understood by your audience. I think playwriting is one of the biggest reasons why I hate it when authors will just info dump and tell us a whole bunch of stuff in a context that doesn't make any sense for either narrator who is thinking about it to be giving us or for the situation that the character is in. If it's not influenced by something in the moment, it upsets me to no end because that couldn't work in a play. You couldn't do that in a play. So those are all the formats that I'm going to talk about today. If you want me to talk about any other kinds of formats, if you have any questions, if you have any formats that you love to write in and I haven't touched on them, or if there's something that I needed to say more about poetry or nonfiction or anything like that, I can absolutely do a follow-up and do more research on what we can learn from each of them and do some practice myself with them. These are all just based on my own personal experience, so I'm sure that there is way more that I could learn. If you enjoyed today's video or you learned something, please leave a like. It'll really help me out, and hit that subscribe button. I put out content like this every Tuesday, and I do a story study every Saturday where I look at a book that I have read recently and see what writers can learn from it, what I learned from it, what I thought could be improved. So if you have any interest in that, hit that subscribe button. And I will be back here on Saturday with one of those story study videos, and back again on Tuesday for another Writing Tip Tuesday.